Members and supporters of the Stop EA Cup coalition will today hold actions in over 10 countries on 4 continents to call on the Chinese government and firms to stop supporting the proposed East Africa crude oil pipeline development. The petitions will be handed over at Chinese embassies and key corporate locations in Uganda, London, Paris, New York, Tokyo, Johannesburg, Frankfurt, Brussels, Copenhagen and Vancouver. Their goal is to ask China to step away from the controversial project, like many other countries who have done so. The East African Crude Oil Pipeline, EACOP, is a planned 1,443-kilometer pipeline in Uganda and Tanzania, which threatens to displace thousands of families and farmers from their land. The oil transported via the pipeline will generate 34 million tons of carbon emissions each year. Joining us on the news is Aryampa Brighton, Chief Executive Officer, Youth for Green Communities. Good morning and thank you for joining me on the news, Aryampa.
Good morning. I'm happy to be here. It is a pleasure.
It's a pleasure to have you as well. Now, can you briefly tell us about the protest happening today in Uganda and many other countries about the East African crude oil pipeline?
Yes, actually, it is a package of 5, which is inclusive of the protest. But in addition to the protest, we have a Twitter space, a Twitter storm. We have a selfie, Stop ECOP selfie campaign, and we also have a video, Stop ECOP video, where activists all over the world are asking the Chinese firms and the government stop funding the East African crude oil pipeline. So it's a big action for us today and for all nature lovers. And basically, the essence is to call the banks, the Chinese banks and the government stop funding the controversial and proposed East African crude oil pipeline.
All right, now the goal is actually to ask a Chinese government to step away. That's China to actually step away. Can you tell us how has the Chinese government and firms supported the construction of the pipeline in Uganda?
Potential financiers have dropped out. That is the American-based firms and banks, European-based. Many of them have dropped out. A commercial bank. We've so far had over 26 commercial banks withdrawing from supporting the East African crude oil pipeline. We've had over 13 insurance companies withdrawing from supporting the controversial pipeline. But at the moment, there are growing expectations that the Chinese firms, the Chinese government are willing to step in and support the pipeline. In May, we had the Ugandan Energy Minister, Honorable Ruth Nankabirwa, stated that the Chinese Exim Bank and other firms are willing to step in and offer loans to finance the project. So it's why, as the groups and activists in Uganda and abroad have organized themselves to ask to enter dialogue with the Chinese to stop funding pipeline and see how they can, if they want to have finance or invest in Uganda, see where they can invest in. Because we have so many proposals that we can give the Chinese to invest in other than investing in the Stop ECOP pipeline, which has been criticized, where we have so many cases. And so this action, we want to stop the Chinese funding, as I mentioned earlier.
All right, so Aryampa, certainly these types of projects come with disadvantages as well. Now, can you tell us what are the main environmental concerns associated with the pipeline project?
Aside the human rights issues that have been raised over and over again, this pipeline is passing through the heart of Africa. In Uganda, particularly, it is passing in the Albertine Graben. This region, for people that don't know it, this is a region that hosts over 70% of Uganda's protected areas. This by Environmental Sensitivity Atlas. They made that research, which is very factual. And you also realize that this still the same region is a biodiversity hotspot. It hosts over 39% of Africa's mammals, and has Uganda still has it's the hotspot of African bird species, which is a high also percent. And this pipeline is passing in that region, which is very, very sensitive. And then we're looking at the national parks there, the wildlife reserves that are being crossed by this pipeline. So this is the worry that if this pipeline goes on, that is the high percentage that is in danger as far as the environmental protected areas are concerned.
All right, taking a look at some of these concerns that you have actually brought up, are there any legal or regulatory frameworks in place to address the environmental concerns raised by this pipeline project?
Yes, yes, absolutely, absolutely. We have very, very many laws in Uganda, starting with the Constitution of Uganda that gives that talks about the environment and how people are going to be involved. And then we also have an article that speaks out how everyone has a right to a decent, healthy environment. But that aside, we have regulations that for such kind of projects, there should be different things that the proponents are supposed to avail. But looking at this project particularly is that we have so many irregularities, so many illegals concerning the regulatory firms or the framework of Uganda. It's why we have cases in the national courts of Uganda, the High Court. We have cases in the Supreme Court of Justice, all challenging the environmental environmental rules that have been disregarded for this project to reach where it is now. We have a court, as I mentioned, a court in the Supreme Court of Justice on the environmental concerns. We have one in the Ugandan High Court on the environmental concerns. So is that regardless of the laws that we have, apparently they have been disregarded. We've had the companies coming up with the environmental impact assessment where they don't include the public. They just because the one that was done basically is that they reached to a few districts, not half of the districts are going to be affected, and this has been challenged because of failure to include public in making such kind of research. And we're talking about the people that are going to be directly affected by the project.
All right.
So all these laws have been disrespected.
All right, Aryampa, Brighton, we indeed hope that the Ugandan government, responds positively to the concerns raised, in these petitions. Thank you so much for joining me on the news this morning.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for listening.